All right. So today's class is immigration, tracking our ancestors. We want to discover our ancestors' story. We need to know the who, what, why, when, where, and how. Who are we going to research? Sometimes we know who's immigrated. Sometimes we want to go out and look for them. Because if you think about it, we're really a country of immigrants. It had to happen at some point. So what do we already know about them? We need to think, why did they immigrate? When did they immigrate? Where do we think they originated from? How did they accomplish the journey? So identifying some of our immigrant ancestors, sometimes it's an oral story. The name and story are repeated through generations. This is my grandfather. Growing up, my mom told us that her father, Henry David Pearson, and his brother Sam came from Sweden where the Titanic sunk. They heard the distress call, but the distance was too great for them to help. And so even though that doesn't give me any dates in there, it gives me an event that I can look up the date for and see when that was. And it was April of 1912. On the other hand, you have some stories that, are just stories. So great-grandmother Jael Laverne Hatch said that her ancestors met the boat. She grew up close to an Indian reservation, and they had really good Indian friends. And one of them had healed her brother's hand. And so she just always wanted to be an Indian. So she just took that on. She did the identify myself as. So you have to kind of think, do the stories have anything to go for, any sources to go with them? There also might be some written genealogies and histories. A lot of us have these family books on our shelves that talk about the journeys and might give us some of the details that we're looking for. An individual who's born in one country and dying in another, of course, they had to immigrate at some point. Or if there's no birth location, if we are going through our genealogies and find someone with no birth location, that's look into as a possible immigrant. And the term of in genealogy. Sometimes you'll see John Smith of New Jersey. And that doesn't mean he was born in New Jersey. That's the last location that he lived. So if you see of as someone's birth location, you're going to want to look into that person a little more. It could be where they were born, but not necessarily. I was watching a genealogy person on YouTube, and he said, well, he's of this state. So, he was born. No, you don't want to assume with that word of. And then we have our genealogical programs that we put all our information into. 3 ones that you can get a free version for: Roots Magic, Legacy, and Ancestral Quest. You can browse through the pedigrees to kind of look for an immigrant ancestor to research, but you can also print reports. They have what's called a place list, where events are ordered by location. Roots Magic does. Roots Magic also has a who was there list. So you can select the location and the range of time to help you identify your ancestors and when they might have. You can create your own report. Like on Ancestral Quest, you can create custom reports. If you're familiar with the PAF program, which was a very popular program up until probably 7 years ago, they stopped updating it. Yeah.
And some of the still use it.
Yeah. If you can still find it, you can use it. And I must admit, I did have a lot of fun creating custom reports on there because it was easy to create those custom reports. And Ancestral Quest is probably the closest to PAF in programming that you're going to find. So with a custom report, you select the individual, your report title, choose the fields that you want, and sort it that way. So you could sort it by country. When you're on Family Search, you can go to the fan chart and show it by birth country. So you want to sign into your Family Search, then you mouse over Family Tree, click on the tree in the drop-down menu, and you're going to choose a fan chart as the type of chart. And then I like to choose 7 generations because some immigrants are really close, like my grandpa, and some are a lot further back. Use birth country on the type. And then there'll be a legend over here on the right that tells you which countries they are. So then you can see kind of where your ancestors come from. So this one is my grandpa from Sweden, but then we go further back to England and Wales with my great grandparents. So that's always kind of fun to do on your chart. So then what do we know about our immigrant ancestor? Well, we can look at vital records, birth, marriage, death records will give us the place, common details and stories, ask more than one person. People and families remember stuff a little differently, or they may have told one person and not told the other. Sometimes during an ancestor's lifetime, they were more willing to share information as they got older. My grandpa, when he came from Sweden, he didn't talk about Sweden anymore. He didn't speak Swedish. He really kind of broke away from that. So ask around and see what might have been shared with other people. Fan club, family, friends. There might not be a birth location for your ancestor, but their sibling or their parent may have given it on a death record or something. So you want to look at the other people around them. We'll look at it a little later, but sometimes people from one town in a country kind of migrated as a group to a new place in America. So looking at a family's birthplace can help us see their movements. This is the Diedrich Peters family on the 1880 census. We see Diedrich, his wife, and their oldest son were born in Germany. Then the 3 daughters were in Wisconsin, and the last son was in Dakota. So using the on the census record, we can calculate that the family moved from Germany to Wisconsin between 1864 and 1868, and that they moved again to the Dakota territories between 1873 and 1875. So that would help us when we're looking for records, and help us know, I mean, it narrows it down to a 4-year window of them coming to America, which is very helpful. Okay, so looking at the birthplaces of the neighbors might give us clues to the nationalities, because nationalities often immigrated to the same place. Like in Idaho, we have a place called New Sweden, where a lot of the Swedish people moved to. So look at their neighbors, and I mean, it doesn't mean that that's where they came from, but it could be a clue. Did they belong to a church or civic group that has ties to another country or ethnic group? So this was one of the articles from a series of articles in North Dakota newspaper of this group of immigrants who formed a society, the Blossom of United Syrian Society. And it was in order to raise funds and awareness for what was happening in their home country. upheaval going on, lots of people were dying. And there's articles from relatives back in Syria. And so that gives us a place that we can go back to. The whole thing about immigration is getting back to the home country, finding links back to the home country. So in this case, it gives us a link back to where they were. Also church records. So this is the Zion Lutheran Church in Salt Lake City, Utah, 1892. This was one of my Swedish ancestors had come to America, and good because they have what's called the household record. So the clergy would come to the home every year and ask them certain questions and update who was born, who was married, who died, who moved. And in fact, they have books just for the people that moved that talk about where they moved from, where they were moving to. Then when they got to that place, they were in another book seeing where they'd moved from and where they were moving to within that parish. So it was really hard. It's really hard to lose a person in Sweden. Well, Katarina Nyberg down here at the bottom of the record is John. And she's one of the few people, there are a few of them that got out of Sweden without telling anyone. And so she's at the back of those household records for several years, listed under persons of unknown whereabouts. And there's a thing on there that says, son said she went to North America. But in Sweden, they have like the actual date that you go. And so she kind of was lost. Well, in looking up his church record here in the United States, she is listed with him again. And it turns out she came the year after him. But the Lutheran Church, Swedish Lutheran Church especially, is very good at keeping records. So it gives us the names of everyone. It gives us what parish in Sweden they were born in or city in the US. They were confirmed. And then it tells us when they came into this congregation in the United States. And this is when they left Sweden. And the parishes that they left from. So they're not necessarily the parish that they were born in, but it's the parish that they left in. So we can see what day she immigrated, which was 1871. And then there's usually remarks. So the reason everyone was crossed out is they eventually, so then they crossed the people. Or if someone's crossed out in a Swedish record, it means it could have meant that they passed away. So we have census records, which often give us an indication of immigration. For 1850 and 60, it'll tell the birthplace of someone. 1870, it'll tell the birthplace. And then there's check marks for a father or a mother of foreign birth. 1880 starts listing the birthplace of all three, the individual and their parents. 1900, same. It also gives the year of immigration, though. How nice is that? I have seen the year of immigration change some people from census to census. And I think that might be them getting older and not remembering, or someone else giving the information. So sometimes you do end up with a range that you still need to search. It also tells the number of years in the United States and their naturalization status. AL is alien, PA is papers, NA is naturalized citizen. Then 1910, birthplace of individual father and mother, year of immigration and naturalization status. 1920, birthplace and mother tongue of individual and father and mother, the year they immigrated and their naturalization status. It also tells the year of naturalization. So year of naturalization, those records at this point will lead you back to the date that they arrived. So it's kind of the roundabout way to find their immigration. 1930 is the birthplace of an individual, father and mother, year of immigration status. 1940, birthplace of individual, doesn't tell you anymore the birthplace of the parents, but the enumerator's instructions say, if foreign born, give country in which birthplace was situated on the 1st of January, 1930. The reason it does that is because that was pretty much the last year for stable borders before the start of World War II. World War II started 1939. We didn't join until after Pearl Harbor, but those people coming from those lands, it had already started for them. So they wanted the name of what it was as of 1937. And they also distinguish between French Canadian and English Canadian, Irish Free State, and Northern Ireland. In 1950, you have the birthplace of the individual. The question for is just, if they're foreign birth, are you naturalized, yes or no? And AP meant you were born abroad to American parents. So you were still considered a citizen, even though you were born in a foreign country. And for some reason, my little thing didn't pop up, but there was a time period in 1907. It's one of my favorite ones to say, 1907 between 1922. If a woman married a man of foreign birth, she lost her citizenship. And so she would be on the census records as, sometimes they would just have alien, sometimes they would say alien by marriage. So even though she was born in the US, she wouldn't have papers, but she would be listed as an alien.
Oh, lovely.
I know. Took them a while to fix that too. Oh, maybe I do have it coming up. So this is kind of a review of last week's class because we did talk about naturalization last week. The first naturalization laws were in 1790 and they've changed several times over the years. So you want to review what the naturalization laws were for your ancestors' naturalization window, the time frame that they would have been naturalized. 1798 to 1828, immigrants were required to report and register with the local court. Those will usually be in the court minutes. They're not going to be of their own. Before 1906, any court of law could grant citizenship. The person needed a declaration of intention or first papers, a petition, or second final papers. So when you have PA on a census record, these are the papers they're talking about. And then the certificate is what would allow them to have naturalized on the census record. After 1906, naturalization was more standardized and it was managed on a federal level. So those records are a little easier to come by. Sometimes there won't even be citizenship records, naturalization records, what were called collective citizenships. And so when we became a country, everyone became a citizen. When we bought the Louisiana Purchase, everyone living there, with the exception of African Americans and Indians, became United States citizens. Those that the 14th Amendment allowed collective citizenship for African Americans, and then the Native American one was later on. So there wouldn't be any paperwork for those. Also derivative citizenship. So if we had an immigrant that came with her husband, citizenship, then her and the children would receive their citizenship. I kind of have it covered by the screen. On the flip side, between 1907 and 1922, a woman who married an alien lost her citizenship. And last week when I was teaching this class, I realized how close my grandma came to that, because she married her husband in 1929. So if she would have married him sooner than that, she would have lost her citizenship. There we go. You also have ethnic exclusions, so there wouldn't be any naturalization records. This example is for Chinese from 1882 to 1943. And actually on the Chinese one, I found out last week that it was 1870 when they actually started excluding Chinese from being able to be naturalized citizens, but the act for them specifically wasn't until 1882. Some of the dash details, you might be able to find immigration information there, military records, draft registration, they list where they're born. So on a census, you might just see Ireland, but if you go to their draft registration, you might have more detail as to where in Ireland they were born. Church records, we saw the church record from the Swedish Lutheran Church. It gives a lot of information. What were the churches in the area? Were they keeping records at the time? Can you find those records? I tried to add a very last minute image on, and we'll look at it at the very end. But sometimes when people left one location and were going to another location, they would get a letter from their clergy that would, it's essentially an introduction letter to a new congregation and say they're of good standing. And the letter that I'll show you at the end is from someone in Sweden to present to, it first says any Swedish Lutheran church, but if you can't find that, then you can do these other churches, this other type of church. But it lists where all the husband, the wife, all of the children, where they were born, their birth dates. And so it's a gold mine of information, and it helps take you back to where they were. Sometimes on education, they'll list where they were born. Newspapers, their obituaries sometimes list where they were born. I'm sorry. Sometimes a newspaper will list all of the people coming in on the ship or all of the people coming on the train. I've noticed that a lot in Utah newspapers in the mid 1800s. They will say, you know, we just had these many people come in, they were on this ship, and it'll list the people on the ship. So then that would lead you back to searching passenger lists and be able to find them on that. Prison records, believe it or not. So I don't know if you've done the scavenger hunt for the Idaho Archives, but on it we talk about John Quigley for mayhem and sent to the Idaho Penitentiary. Well, these are his induction papers or his admission papers to the Idaho State Penitentiary. And we can see John Quigley from Kootenai County. His term started November of 1892. That's when it was decreed. He's serving 1 year for mayhem. And it just says he's born in Ireland. But then when we go to the name and address of nearest relative, his mother, Mary Quigley, is living in County Mayo, Ireland. So this is 1892. Records are going to be a lot better in Ireland in 1892. We could probably find his mother in County, kind of work backwards to get his records and find out when he left Ireland and came to America. We do know it was sometime after he was 21 and before he was 30, because he says on this document that he left his parents' home when he was 21. So that kind of gives us clues as to where we're going to look for his immigration information, where and when. So the more you know about someone, the more documents and records and stories you collect, the better you're going to be able to find where and when they came to the United States. So why did they immigrate? That's an ask when you're trying to figure out their immigration. Was it voluntary? Did they come for religious reasons? The LDS Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, when they were first starting, they'd sent missionaries out and they invited those members to come back and congregate in Utah. So we have kind of a mass immigration of those people. And there's a database called Saints by Sea, and that lists what ship they were on, lists them as families. But there were other churches that kind of did that same thing. There were, I don't remember the specific church, but in Germany, a lot of them went to Brazil. And I was helping someone who's from Mexico, but there was a German community that moved to this location in Mexico. So there's a high concentration of German in this little town in Mexico. So, what religion were they? Could that have possibly been why they decided to immigrate? Sometimes they were doing it for better economic opportunities. We have the potato famine in Ireland and things like that, where they weren't able to own land, but if they came to America to own land. Political unrest. We see that a lot even to this day. Sometimes they came to join family, and we call that chain migration, where one or two people will immigrate and usually send money back to more people come. In the case of my grandfather, his aunt and her husband had come to America, and then she sent money back for 2 kids to come. And so my grandpa and his younger brother were chosen. And so, the whole family might not have come at the same time. Indentured servitude, where there was a contract for labor in exchange for coming to America. It could have been involuntary migration, a convict. So you can look for court records in the county of origin that'll talk about when they were sentenced and where they were supposed to go when the ship was supposed to leave. And there are passenger lists for convict ships. Prisoner of war. So a good example is the Scottish, a lot of Scottish prisoners of war from the Battle of Dunbar were sent to the British colonies in 1650. There were about 150 of them because there was overcrowding. It was easier to send them somewhere else rather than try and feed them and house them. And there's a database for that. Slavery, they were taken from their home. There was no work or no pay for work and no freedom. They could be an apprentice, so under the control of a master craftsman. A lot of times that was a way for them to have a career. Even some of the more wealthy families, everything went to the first son. And so the others had to have careers. So there are records and databases for apprenticeships. So when did your ancestor immigrate? That helps you decide kind of what records might be available. There are 3 major waves: the colonial era, where we have a scarcity of records. The language and handwriting can be an obstacle in trying to decipher those. You have the mid-19th century wave, which was from about 1815 to 1865. That encompasses the potato famine, the Irish famine, the gold rush, where everyone heard there was gold. And a lot of that immigration wave came up from South America through Mexico. I have a friend who I help with hers, and she has a lot of relatives from the Chile area that had traveled up through. Then you have 1880 to 1920, and that was mainly Central, Southern, and Eastern Europe. Some of that was the Jews escaping persecution. Well, and if you think about that, you know, that covers the First World War. And so that would be a lot of political unrest at that time. 1920, they started placing quotas on. So where might your ancestor have come from? What records are available in their country of origin? So we talked a little about the Swedish church books. The inflyting and utflyting books were books specifically saying where they were moving to, even within the country itself. Those were recorded, but when they left to go to America or other countries, that was recorded also. Find My Past has the convict and transportation collection. So when you're looking for those ancestors that got sent away for being bad, that's a good source to go to, especially if they came from that area. And some of them got sent to the United States, some of them got sent to Australia. If they got sent to Australia, there's a collection, there's the Elephine collection, which will take you to the Australian Trove records. But those are kind of interesting to look up and see what they did to get transported. Sometimes it's very petty, a very minor thing, but they sent them away. What were the guidelines for immigrating? So we talked a little about the quotas. In Sweden, you had to get permission. Germany, you had to fill out an application. Someone showed me an application that they had from one of their ancestors who was coming from Germany, about why he was leaving, where he was going, and other information. So again, for things like that, I would go to the Family Search Wiki, because the rules are going to be different everywhere. And that's the hard part about teaching a general subject like this, is that you really have to research what was going on at the time and the place that they're coming from. And the Family Search Wiki is really good for that. In America, like I said, sometimes where they settled gives an indication of where they came from. What records were created in their new home? So did they arrive at a time when we had death certificates? Did they arrive at a time where there were a lot of churches? Because nowadays, you know, someone's probably not going to bring a letter from their past church saying, I'm in good standing. So think about what records might have been created at the time. What are the possible routes? You know, a lot of times we think Ellis Island, everyone came through Ellis Island, but there were a lot of ports beyond that. And there was a lot of through New Orleans and through Boston, or they would immigrate into Canada and come down through the border. So how did they immigrate? So ports of entry, like I said, we normally think of just Ellis Island, but there are many, many more in the handout. If I can get it to print. If not, we'll email it to you. There's a link to look up the different ports that are available. And also Steve Morris's website. He has a section on immigration, and he has some of the different listings. So passenger acquired before 1820. And it doesn't mean that you won't find a passenger list before 1820. It's just that they were not required. In fact, there were two places that started requiring it earlier. One was New Orleans, and the other one was in Pennsylvania. And they started, one was about 20 years before, and the other one I think was about 15 years before. They started requiring those. And then you have, instead of by ship, coming through the borders, the closest to one to us is Eastport, Idaho, just north of here. Canadian border, border crossing, and there are records for those. I know they have those records on Ancestry. What kind of documentation would they need for these for immigration? And some of the later immigration, passport or visas. I looked on Ancestry today, and they had a passport collection for the United States that said it started in late 1700s. And I didn't get a chance to go look for one from late 1700s, but you know, that would be an interesting collection to look through. Some of the more recent ones, there's photos in their passports. There was one I saw on Ancestry that was a little girl from Brazil. And of course, I couldn't read the Portuguese and my husband wasn't handy at the time, but I believe it had her parents listed, her listed, where she was from, and a little picture of her. The petition for naturalization and certificate of arrival will tell you the name of the ship and the date of the arrival. And to get to those, you can go to familysearch.org, browse only microfilm, search the location and time frame of the naturalization. It helps too to create a timeline. I love timelines. Create a timeline for your immigrant, and that can help you discern when the naturalization took place. On these films that are browse only, there's usually an index at the beginning of the book. And then once you find your naturalization record, you want to check a few images before and a few images after to see the various paperwork that goes with it. So this is the naturalization certificate for my grandfather. And he didn't naturalize until 1944. And I thought this was interesting. I hadn't noticed this before, but it gives the date that he naturalized, 29 June, the year of our Lord, 1944, and of our independence, the 168th year. Well, years implied. So it lists how long we had been an independent country on there. I did not know that. And I've looked at this several times, but I didn't obviously read through it all. So on this, it doesn't tell us when he immigrated though. But from this, we knew there were naturalization records for him. We looked at what we thought were all the passenger lists for 1912, all the data. Couldn't come up with and couldn't find it where he naturalized from. So I went through the unindexed naturalization record, so the browse onlys, and I found his certificate of arrival. I found his petition first, and then the certificate of arrival was 2 pages ahead of that with another person in between. So like I said, you want to go a few images before and a few images after, because I think they were just stuffing stuff in at some point.
Can you go back one for a second and look
Yeah.
at the number?
Yep. So there's a petition number up here.
It doesn't matter.
Well, arrival. Let me go this way. Oops. Oh, that's okay. It's my cold fingers. Okay. So that's all right. There we go. So this is his certificate of arrival. And yeah, it's a different number because this is not the naturalization papers. But it does tell us what ship he came in on and where he came in. He came in Newport News, Virginia, which was not a huge immigration port. In fact, the ship that he was on didn't carry a lot of people. He has on here David Henrik Fromberg. So Frobohm. So his name in Sweden was David Henrik Trobohm, with a TR, the O with the 2 dots, JBOM. But for some reason, it was on the passenger list as this. And so that's why we weren't finding him in any databases. But it tells what day he came in, May 1st, 1912, and that he was on the Norwegian SS Noruga. And then this is from his petition, and it says where his last place of residence in Sweden, and he immigrated from Christiania, Norway. So this is actually Oslo. There was a king of Norway at one point that changed the name of Oslo for, it was less than 20 years. It was Christiania because that was his name. And then it goes back to Oslo. But it tells me he went from Sweden to Norway first and then came over. And that he came into Newport News, Virginia, and the date and the ship again, which then once we knew this information, the error in his name, where he came in, there is a website for Norwegian immigration, which I never would have thought to look for my Swedish grandpa in the Norwegian immigration. And there's a picture of the ship and what the cabins looked like that he and his brother would have come in. So it's really getting to know your ancestor, getting to know when they might have immigrated, where they might be coming from, what rules and documents might be created because of that. So any questions? I think like this with anything else, you need to choose an ancestor process. Even if you already know when they immigrated, just kind of go through the process. In fact, it might even be easier if you already know when they immigrated to go through the process and find the records that go along with that, so that you have practice doing it. Let me minimize this screen, change my share.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, I have a grandfather that we understand came over with his parents from Switzerland, but we don't know for sure where in Switzerland, and the name was changed when they came, and we don't know what it was before.
So when did he pass away?
Oh, this was back in the 1800s somewhere. I don't have the information handy.
Oh, okay, so I'd probably make an appointment with me and we can kind of look at the time frame and what collections are available for that, because I know there are some available for Swiss immigration. So
Okay. What's your name again?
my name is Pam Deuce.
Oh, okay. I just couldn't remember.
That's okay. Some days I don't remember it either. Okay.
Okay.
I'm looking for.
All right. Yeah. My uncle, my father's brother, oh, actually it's adopted father, but anyway, I still do there. And he thought that the last name might have been Schnell, but I'm not sure why.
Oh,
because they changed it to Boyle.
that would be quite the difference. So this is a translation of that church letter I talked about. It said to farmer Per Molin belonging to this is the name of the parish in Sweden. Holy Assembly, and this is the diocese in the Kingdom of Sweden, who is immigrating to the United States of North America, is issued the following certificates. He was born the 22nd of December, 1843, and is confirmed and of good reputation. And he has thorough knowledge of the Christian religion. So that's another thing that the clergy would do when they went out every year, is they would kind of test them on if they knew what they were supposed to. He Christina Pear's daughter, born 8th January 1847, and is confirmed and of good reputation and possesses sufficient knowledge of the Christian religion, who accompanies him together with the following children. And then it goes through the children. And if you can find a birth date and a parish, then you can go back clear to the 1600s in Sweden. You just have to remember jurisdiction. This is a church letter, so you're going to be looking for a church parish when you go back to Sweden. And it's the same with England. There's parish jurisdictions for the church, and then there's government jurisdictions. So in Sweden, it's a little easier because the government just used the church records up until the 1900 somethings. But in England, keep in mind, if you're looking at something that's church and it has that jurisdiction, you're going to want to look that up in the Family Search Wiki under, go to England and jurisdictions, and it'll show you separate from government and church. But yeah, so
The flip flop so much.
in England, it's weird how many jurisdictions they have for one spot. Had someone from Sandpoint that taught a class on it, but you'll see even on their census records, you'll see some church parishes, and then you'll see the government jurisdiction for that area and so forth. So it can get kind of confusing. So you want to look up all the different places that it's located. So yeah. All
How'd
right.
your relative get from Virginia to Idaho?
I think he took a train because his aunt had paid for him and his brother. She was living in the Shelley Blackfoot area at the time here in Idaho, which is really close to New Sweden. But it was her sister's children that she'd sent it for. Originally, she'd sent enough for 2, and she was going to have the oldest 2 boys come, but the oldest one was in the military at the time. They had conscription service that they had to serve so many years in the military over there. So
Your sister ever come?
nope, he did not see his family again. He was,
Oh,
trying to think, he came in 1912, so he was probably 17. His brother was 14. But you do with kids coming over without their parents in those teen years, and a lot of times they're coming to work, send back for the parents to come. The lady who gave me permission to share this letter, she had one family that 2 of the kids came first, then they sent for 3 of the other kids, and the parents were actually the last ones to come. But that's that chain migration that you see. So, all right, awesome. Thanks for coming, guys.
thank you. Are you gonna like
Even with,
email them?
oh, here, why don't you give me your emails? Because I tried
Right.
printing it on 2 different computers. We're just not having a ton of luck today. Kim, did you want it?
Oh.
Pass?
So much. No.
Oh, no worries.
Jerri Let's see.
Oh, there it is. I'm like, I know it's in there. Sarah,
SAR, oh, SFS.
SFS, there we are.
I'll change it.
Oh, you guys don't want to edit it for me? I'll let you make comments. How's
Yeah.
that?
Give me a link to that.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you. I have a feeling it might be warmer out there than it is in here. Oh,
Toasty.
is it? So this is the US passport application collection from 1795 to 1925. I'm gonna go through that at some point and see. But if you go to their card catalog, and this is the same with Family Search, you can type in like passport. I think I saw some for Puerto Rico. No, must not, but there's like Hawaii, US ones, Latvia, Lithuania. Starting to come on more and more. And even with some of the airlines, have passenger lists and crew lists. So just go to the catalog and type in things like airline, passport, visas, and you'll see some of the different collections. You can also just go to like immigration. So let me clear this. You can just go to immigration and they have 565 different collections. You can narrow it by location. So if we narrow it to North America. Yeah. Anyway, so have fun. So.
Pam,
Yes,
this is Paula. I would love to have the handout as well.
let me put that in the chat. I'm glad you said something. I don't think I closed it. No, I must have. Just a second and I'll bring it.
It took me a while to get here because I had to go through the Wednesday night Zoom link.
Oh,
Yeah, I couldn't get it from the link in the email and I couldn't get it from the Monday Lunch and Learn Zoom link. And I called and she said you were working on it. And I tried to find another way and I thought, well, I'll just click on this. And lo and behold, you were on the Wednesday night.
that is so weird. I was wondering, I tried getting in and it said you're on a different meeting and
Yes.
oh, now I'm gonna chat again.
So I think your different meeting was the Wednesday night link.
Wow, I would think that would be expired.
I was gonna ask you if you knew what they were
think.
doing on Wednesday night.
Oh,
Didn't
let's look.
mention it.
Okay, so I sent that link to the chat. Wednesday night's class is, and no, what day are we? No, beginning family search hints and resources. So the little up. Oh, yeah. Do.
I think that's a class that he could probably understand
Yeah.
what's going on. I mean, the couple I've been to, he would have done just fine.
Well, and I think they're on YouTube if you want to go back and look at them.
Okay. Yes.
So, yeah. And then the 22nd is Ancestry Basics. Cool. And let's see, do I have a class next week? I think it's Love and Marriage. because it was really close to Valentine's Day. Yep, love and marriage. If you're like me, when you say that, you think of that song in your head, love and
I
marriage.
wouldn't have it till you did that.
And now you won't be able to forget it all day long. You're gonna go around humming it. Oh, cool. All right. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Did you get that link okay?
I have no idea because I think if I go somewhere else, I lose you.
It's in the chat.
So,
We go to the bottom.
yeah, go down to the bottom and a menu should pop up. On your computer or you on a device?
I'm on my phone. Oh, wait. Chat. Oh, I got it. Yes.
Sweet.
Oh. It goes to the wrong.
That's okay. Here, let me do this. Oh,
Goes to Gmail, and I don't even know how to get to Gmail.
oh, you don't know how to get to your Gmail?
No, I don't use it.
Do you have a email address that you do use?
Yes. It's TSP, and I think I might be in your list.
Oh, yep, there you are.
That's the one. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. There you go. Remind me to do that that way next time.
I will do that. One of these days I'll catch up and get all the handouts together.
Good luck.
Yeah, really. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great week, everybody.
You too.